Yeah, yesterday I was explaining about in the Unit 9. I have said on all the points international terrorism, as well as I have explained to you how actually this concept of types of terrorism, nature, and everything. Hope you understand clearly that. So, we are going to have discussions under Unit 10, which is almost international are determinants of international relations. Okay. Yeah. The topic is Unit 10, as in political sciences, it is a part of international relations. And the topic is determinants and features of India's foreign policy. In your book, you can find this chapter, Unit 10, in page number 116, 116. Okay. So, here in a determinants of foreign policy, I said example that in yesterday, what are the determinants means? Basis for India's foreign policy. Why India need to maintain the foreign policy? For that, we are going to have discussions on this particular thing. The determinants are basically which classified into the different factors. One is that geographic strategic position, political traditions and historical experience, Indian cultural values, economic factors, and contemporary international milieu, Nehru's charismatic leadership, all those things is comes under the purview of determinants of India's foreign policy. Okay. So here, first we try to understand the geography. Geographic strategic positions. So geographic strategic positions, one must understand here is that geographically India is located in area of considerable strategic significance. See here is that geographically India is located in area of considerable strategic significance. In 1903, Lord Curzon, who was the Governor General of India, predicted that its geographical position would make India to be in the forefront of international affairs because it is sharing the huge boundaries between the one another country. Is that Yes. So we'll start of this determinants of India's foreign policy geographical location. Then then here is that geographical positions. If you could see that exactly, India is located in an area of considerable strategic significance. In 1903, the Lord Curzon, the Governor General of India, predicted that its geographical position would make India to be in the forefront of international relations. Then geographically is located in the area of that. The first one, India, if you could see geographically, it's been an it has a lot of importance in a geographical location where you can see exactly it is located at the point of. If you have to consider my question affecting the Middle East, India inevitably comes into the picture. If you have to consider the Middle East may not be directly connected to Southeast Asia, but are connected with it, India. Even if you think in terms of regional organization in Asia, you have to keep in touch with the other regions. And whatever regions you may have in mind, the importance of India cannot be ignored. The India is located in the pivotal country in South Asia. All the South Asian, Western Asia, and much of Southeast Asia as well has been influenced by the changing trends in India. So what I mean to say here is that the geographical strategic positions is very, very important. And as it makes us to understand how India is need to maintain the foreign policy with other countries. So as it is becomes one of the determinants of that, and we can understand the in terms of geographical positions, India has to maintain the foreign policy with them. Next one, political traditions and historical experience. If you could see, uh, so political traditions and historical experiences plays a very, very important role. India's foreign policy arose out of its political traditions and historical experience. This fact was noticed by Nehru when he said, "It is completely incorrect to call our policy. Nehru's policy, it is incorrect because of all that I have done is to give voice to that policy. I have not." Yes, is that my voice is audible to everyone? So let us have discussions on the determinants of India's foreign policy. So you could see, you could see that the determinants of India's foreign policy, how it is important. So yeah. See, the concept of the international relations, if you could understand that. Hi, welcome to Dr. B. R. Ambedkar Open University, and there was a little disturbances which was going on. So my voice is clear to everybody now, right away. Okay. So now, yesterday I was explaining you that determinants of India's foreign policy. That was about India's foreign policy, which I'll explain to you. Okay, determinants is something what you need to understand. It's the basis of India's foreign policy. In that, I gave an examples to you how India is need to maintain the foreign policy as in order to maintain better relations with each and every country and all of that. I said it. Okay. Now, I'll tell you what are the basis. The first one, there are few factors which one can assume it that why India need to maintain its foreign policy. It is for sure. The first one is that the first factor that one need to understand is that geographical strategic position. The first one is that the basics determinants of India's foreign policy is that geographical position. Why the geographical positions is very, very important that one need to understand is, see, geographical positions is something where it makes us to understand to how India is need to, maintain the, why India need to maintain the foreign policy and all those things one need to understand. Because, India's position is geographically, if you could see, it is a very strategic location. Like, if you see that in exactly from the north point of view, and it has an every chance to get into the Europe, as similarly that in which has a lot of connectivity in terms of to have, that in connectivity to southeastern countries and all of that. So, as in order to entering into that, and India need to maintain its foreign policy for sure, because geographical positions of India, which is making to India to that, and for sure it has to have physical connectivity for that. Okay. Now, political traditions and historical experience. The second factor is if you could understand that why India need to maintain the India is why India is very important to maintain the foreign policy in the sense. And the second one is that political reason. Political traditions and historical experiences makes us to understand. I'll tell you one thing that it's not something here which maintaining its a foreign policy right from 1950. So, like for example, we got an independence in the year of 1947. Okay, so not from exactly that time. So, right from beginning, if you could see, the India has a lot of evidences to that, and it has maintained the foreign policy. Like for example, I say 1927 the former Prime Minister of India, who was the first Prime Minister of India, paid visit to USSR in the time of 1927. So we had a lot of, a kind of relations with them, not only with this one country like USSR, but also with every country. Like, at the time of MK Gandhi's, Mohandas Karamchand Gandhi, if you could see, Akbar and M.N. Roy, and, the many people like M.N. Roy, if you could see, the one and only the one India's leader who went to the foreign and who have established the Communist Party of India. in San Francisco for the first time, Communist Party of India, what you see, the foundations of the party, which for the first time had been take place in the United States of America, who have taken an assistance from foreign lady, that an Anna Arendt. So you should see the political traditions and historical experiences makes us to understand that India need to maintain for sure the India foreign policy as the and historical evidences of an India had made to us to maintain the foreign policy right from beginning and in the 19th century to till now. Next one is an Indian cultural values. See, the culture is also becomes a backbone to that to maintain the foreign policy to India because faith in the Indian culture and pride in the Indian civilizations have been the sources of India's commitment to follow the independent. Leading role in international relations, isn't it? I don't know why this discussion again and again. So cultural and aspects also have become the foremost important to that, and in order to maintain the foreign policy of India. And the next thing, when as far as concerned to economic factors, since India was under the colonial regime of United Kingdom, which means in Britishers, nearly 2 centuries it remained primarily the poor country at the time of our political independence in 1947. Therefore, needed time and economic assistance. But see, why do we need to maintain the foreign policy? Yeah. Sorry for the disturbances, and again it is disconnecting and also is coming. I don't know what is the reason here. Okay. Just I'll off the camera. Yeah. Yeah, another aspects to maintain the India's foreign policy is that values and value-based system. Because value of culture is also becomes an very, very important as it is becomes a mandatory to India to maintain the foreign policy with other countries. Like since back then 100 and 200 years ago, if you could see, India was ruled by many of colonial rulers. One thing I've said. Next one, that and economic factors. You see, uh, is that my voice is audible clearly to you now? Hello. Okay. See, economic factors is very, very important. See, India was under the control of colonial rule for past 100 years ago, where the economy of India, which wasn't downtrodden by many of other countries. So, as in order to that, and in order to retaining back them, in order to maintain economical assistance from other countries, India need to maintain the foreign policy. Today, if you could see, India is in a part of many international monetary organizations, which we are receiving a lot of loans from outside of the country, where we are investing in a lot of welfare projects in India. So that and it could be a one part of an assistance to India directly in terms of to development of it. So all these in perspectives of these things, it makes us to understand how the determinants are very, very important to understand the foreign policy. Similarly, if you say contemporary international relations, see, do you know that in I think India has played a very, very important role in order to maintain the good relations with the other countries. After the Second World War, if you could see entire the scenario of the world relations was breaked into two pieces. Like one is superpower, breaked into two pieces. One is an it was almost you can consider it as a bipolar. Okay, one side America is playing a very important role, and another side, and USSR means Russia is playing a very, very important role. And if India would be a part of United States of America, which is a capitalistic strategy, then we will be in the and that an hitting point of Russia. And if you could join with Russia, you are going to become a one finest and enemy in the hands of United States of America. So this has become a nasty things at the time of 1950. For that reason, what actually Nehru, the first Prime Minister of India, what he has done, and he brought a new policy which is called NAM, non-alignment policy. What does it mean? This non-alignment policy is that non-alignment policies is something, and where it helps you to maintain the better foreign policy with each and every country, not being in the hands of upper power like USSR and United States of America. So what I mean to say, the non-foreign policy of India's foreign policy, the NAM, which was introduced by Nehru, was become a finest policy. Today, we are maintaining the good foreign policy with the many other countries, I can say. So the next thing is that if you'd say Nehru's charismatic leadership. So one of the factors of determinants of India's foreign policy is that the Nehru also is reason, because that when deciding the person to become a first prime minister of the country, there was a lot of discussions which have been held between one another, like who has to become a prime minister, whether Sardar Vallabhbhai Patel has to become a prime minister or else Nehru has to become a prime minister. But by knowing all the, I mean, charismatic leaderships of all the international Congress leader, even Sardar Vallabhbhai Patel gave nod to Nehru has to become a prime minister because he knows and he has maintained a lot of foreign policy with other countries. Like he paid visit to USSR in the 1927 itself, and who understood the planning system, how the Russia has succeeded by introducing of a planning system. The similarly after 1950s, and he as a first prime minister of the country who brought us to an implementation of the first 5-year plans, and through that and we have started a lot of progressive politics in India. So Nehru's and charismatic, and who had an finest relations with other countries, who can understand that how India has to be in the and lamplight, and how India has to be developed. See, if Nehruji could not bring the non-alignment policy, we would have been in the hands of Russia or else in USA. If we could be a part and parcel of the Russia, definitely we will be in the hands of an United States of America, such as a kind of enmity relations we used to maintain it, because as in order to avoidance of the such kind of a future consequences, Nehru, what he has done, he did not part of USA, or he did not part of a USSR, because he maintained the neutral foreign policy that was non-alignment policy. These non-alignment policy, now it is playing a very, very important role. And the policy of non-alignment is that make friendship with everybody, maintain the foreign policy with everybody without showing any kind of a discrimination. This is a one factor which actually, if you could read entire the foreign policy of India, which is in the name of NAM, non-alignment policy, you could understand exactly how it is maintained, isn't it? So that was the one factor, all these determinants, which makes us to understand that and how India need to maintain the foreign policy with them. Once again, I'll tell you, the first determinants of India's foreign policy was the geographic strategic position, and the second one is that then political and aspect, and economic factors also causes of to maintain the foreign policy, and similarly cultural values also made us to understand, and Nehru's and charismatic leadership also makes us to understand. Similarly, along with that, a NAM policy, non-alignment policy, is also one of the finest determinants of India's foreign policy. That is, makes us to understand that how India need to maintain the foreign policy with other country till now, and all those things. Now we are going to understand the other aspects of this in core paper is that um, you know main features of India's foreign policy. Based on the determinants of India's foreign policy, we could understand its features of India's foreign policy. The feature of India's foreign policy was non-alignment. What does it mean, non-alignment? I said just no. And the word non-alignment, which makes you to understand exactly that, a non-aligning with anybody. Why this word has been uttered like alignment in the sense 19 after Second World War, whole world it was in the line of bipolar. Bipolar means two countries only, which was completely ruling out the problems of the world, who are headed over the entire the world by one is United States of America by promoting the strategy of capitalism, and another one USSR by promoting the concept of communism. So these two concepts, which and promoting entire the world, and no other country was, and that an on par with them. So as in keeping in view of that, Nehru refused and to not aligning with anybody. What is the foreign policy of India? India's foreign policy is nor capitalism or neither communism. So India has come up with a new strategy which is called non-alignment policy. అంటే మేము యుఎస్ తో ఫ్రెండ్షిప్ చేయము అండ్ రష్యాతో ఫ్రెండ్షిప్ చేయము. అంటే ఇద్దరు కూడా మాకు ఇద్దరు సమానులే. So this was an idea which I've come up with this and Nehru as it was made us, because if you could have being a part of this in bipolar, we would be in the status of till 1991 as a Cold War. I think everybody's seen that the countries which have supported to USA, and that was all countries in the enemies in the hands of Russia. The countries which have supported to Russia after 1950s all were treated to and enmities to United States of America. So there were a lot of Cold War situations have been took place. So as in order to avoidance of all certain circumstances, Nehru had made it an idea to bringing in the neutral foreign policy, which is a non-alignment foreign policy. So non-alignment is something that, and it does not mean that, and we are not going to make the relations with anybody, but we are going to make the foreign policy with everybody with the slogan of neutrality. Okay, with the slogan of neutrality. We maintain an foreign policy with everybody for the cause, like see trade, mem trade chestamo, and we send a manpower to them, and we also import the manpower from them. We do assistance to them reciprocally, the other country has to support us, and these kind of a system which have been enabled in India in the 1950 by avoidance of bipolar entry. So this as a one. So the basic connotations of the non-alignment is that India did not align with any other country like USA or USSR, but it has come up with a neutral foreign policy. The neutral foreign policy is called it as a non-alignment. It maintained the any kind of trade and foreign relations with everybody without showing any kind of discriminations to that. Okay. So next one, peaceful coexistence. We had a nature of India's foreign policy always promote a peace. Okay. So like for example, and in the span of entire the moment of India's foreign policy, if you could understand right from 1950, all the way India will promote the concept of peaceful coexistence. Okay, India never ever encouraged anybody to go with violence. It's not like something United States of America. It's not like something Russia. Again, as far as concerned to any other country, and can you tell me one particular country always promotes the violence despite and to stopping of a violence in the foreign policy? Can you tell me one country's name which always promote the concept of violence? Can you tell me one country that always promote the concept of the violence in the foreign policy? Isn't my voice is audible to everybody? anybody, but we are going to make the foreign policy with everybody with the slogan of neutral.
Yeah. So let me, nice. Somebody is giving a response. China. Okay, fine then. China also is then, Russia is also there. But in the span of an India's, then I think it never ever had it that an India is always is go with any kind of a, violence policy and all of the thing. So India's an existence is always depends on the peaceful coexistence. It supports and to bringing up a peaceful coexistence. It supports and to follow up the non-aggression, mutual respect each other, protecting of a sovereignty, and also there's an equality and mutual benefit, peaceful coexistence. All these things we have come up with this 1954 this agreement, Panchsheel agreement. So we had made and with every country that in Panchsheel agreement. What does it mean? Panchsheel agreement is that Panchsheel agreement is that five virtues. These all five virtues were supported to, the promoting of a peaceful coexistence between the country. So India had a theme of a foreign policy that in promoting of a peace, despite to promoting of a violence. That you need to understand. Okay. So next is that anti-colonialism and anti-imperialism. India's foreign policy, another feature is that it never ever supports the colonial intervention. What does it mean, colonial? See, మన దేశం ఏ దేశాన్ని కూడా ఆక్యుపై చేయదు. అదే విధంగా ఏ దేశం కూడా ఇండియాలో వచ్చి ఇండియా యొక్క అధికారాన్ని తీసుకోవద్దు. అంటే we don't support any kind of a colonialism. Similarly, we don't support any kind of a feudalism, like imperialism. అంటే సామ్రాజ్యవాదం కావచ్చు, అంటే ఒకే పరిపాలన, ఒకే అంటే ల్యాండ్ లార్డ్స్ ని పరిపాలిస్తారు. అలాంటి సిస్టమ్ అనేది ఇండియాలో లేదు ఎప్పుడు కూడా. సో ఇట్ ప్రమోట్స్ యాంటీ colonialism and anti-imperialism foreign policy. It is completely against the concept of this colonialism and imperialism. Next one, opposition in radical discrimination. See, India never ever encourages to anybody in terms of to make an habituated of and a kind of um, uh, uh, how can I say radically, like see if you Punjab, Khalistan, if you could see the idea of the Khalistan always is and promote the kind of radicalism, so radical groups and all of that. But India never ever entertain any kind of a radical system. It always goes with the promotions of peace. Okay. So faith in the United Nations, test with ties with the Commonwealth. So faith in the United Nations, whatever the United Nations treaties we have so far, and in that, and India will be having a finest and faith in that. Like we respect the rules and regulations of United Nations of organization. We respect all the treaties which we have signed under the United Nations of organization. We respect all the international organizations without violating of a simple reason. So anything which you can see, a number of rules and regulations have been made up and by the United Nations of organization. We never ever said no. Whatever we accept and we have been accepting, we have been following since day one without any and kind of underestimating them and all of that. So we do respect some international organizations. We do respect the faith in the United Nations, and we do follow all the norms and conditions which are passed by the United Nations of organization with its allied organizations also. Ties with Commonwealth. Let me tell you, and we do. What is a Commonwealth? Commonwealth is something the countries which past colonized by the Britishers. Now it has become an independent countries. అంటే గతంలో అన్ని దేశాలు బ్రిటిష్ పరిపాలన చేత పరిపాలించబడి ప్రస్తుతం ఇండిపెండెంట్ గా అయి ఉన్నాయో వాటన్నిటిని కూడా మనం ఏం పేరుతో పిలుస్తామంటే కామన్వెల్త్ కంట్రీస్ అంటాం. ఈ కామన్వెల్త్ కంట్రీస్ తో కూడా ఇండియా will maintain the foreign policy with them without showing any kind of a discrimination. So India would always maintain peaceful coexistence, promotion of peace without creating any kind of a disturbances. It goes with the good ideology and it respects the United Nations of organization. It also ties with that. And that we have a finest foreign policy with every country as such, which is, you know, as such, the in terms of concept of this in United Nations of organization. So hope you understand that, and particularly that, and how India maintain the foreign policy with the peaceful coexistence and all of that. Similarly,
Now, special bias for Asian Africa. It goes one the ideas of them in a specific manner that in special bias for Asian Africa. It gives a lot of importance to the yeah, the special bias for Asian Africa. So it gives a lot more attentions to that to maintain the foreign policy with the Asian African continents also. Okay. So and the next one is that disarmament. I said that before it, and we should see that fight against terrorism. So since in the 1950s, India never ever encourages any kind of an extreme violation or extreme violence or normal violence. So which you means when it is promoting a peaceful coexistence, one has to understand easily that India never ever and encourages any kind of terrorism. So our India's foreign policy is that always against the terrorism, and we always made it on our agenda, made it our principle anti-terrorism. We do not support a terrorism in our country. We don't support any kind of a terroristic activities across the worldwide. So India's foreign policy always, who are the perpetrators of the terrorism, we always discourage them. We always is a make a point against them. So and always we again we fight against the terrorism, be it is an anybody, be it is an any of a person from India, be it is any person from the any country, that we don't support any kind of a terroristic activities against them. So this would become one of the finest features of India's foreign policy. That it makes us to understand that exactly that India would fight and have been fighting against the terrorism activities. Next one, disarmament. Disarmament is a something that we actually supports and not to increase the armaments. What does it mean disarmament? అంటే ఆర్మ్స్ ని అన్డెవలప్ చేసుకోకుండా ఉంచడమే డిజార్మమెంట్. అంటే జనరల్ మీనింగ్ లో ఇది. బట్ యాజ్ ఫర్ అస్ కన్సర్న్ దట్ ఇండియాస్ ఫ్యూచర్ పాలసీ, ఫారెన్ పాలసీలో డిజార్మమెంట్ అంటే ఏంటంటే ఒక కంట్రీకి కావాల్సినటువంటి ఆయుధాలు ఎంత మొత్తంలో అవసరమో అవన్నీ కూడా సమకూర్చుకొని అండ్ ఏదైతే ఎక్సెసివ్ వెపన్స్ ఉన్నాయో అప్పుడు డిజార్మమెంట్ అనేది ఫాలో అప్ చేయాలి. సో హోప్ యూ అండర్స్టాండ్ దట్ disarmament is the something. It does not mean that exactly the country has to disarm the entire the weapons, but the country has to have the sufficient and adequate weapons which is needed for the security development of the country. To that mark, and one has to have it the weapons. Further, they do not, and the India do not encourages the excessive weaponry, excessive and increase of the excessive proliferations of the weapons. So, and as this kind of a connotations, which makes us to understand that disarmament. Okay, so India's foreign policy also has a features of disarmament. So all these features you can make it and understand that exactly how India's foreign policy has become the foremost important to us. So that you can understand is very. Now that Unit 11, which is an India's relations with the major powers like USA, Russia, and China. Now let me start with the India and as well as to USS, United States of America's foreign policy. You know that in India was become um, independent country in the year of 1947, August 15. We have started our and international policies and after 1950. Okay, so our planning system have begun commenced right from 1950. Similarly, we have started
the momentum of foreign policy in the 1950s. So similarly, as far as concerned that since in 1950, that we have been maintaining the good and thought process with the United States of America. And at the time of further, as Richard L. Park observes, so one of the authors of the international relations says that um, the Constitution of the Republic of India of 1950 incorporates the fundamental principles of the political theory in the form of democratic institutions that are be found in the United States. The Richard L. which says that, and we can see out the roots of India's foreign policy right from 1950 as in its base. So we do see a lot of some divergent views on the major issues like India and United States of America, which has given it. Like at the time of Indo-American relations during the Cold War. I'll tell you what is a Cold War. First thing, then you can understand the and India-US Cold War relations. After the Second World War, many countries lost. Many countries have resulted in losers. Okay, losers. లైక్ ఎవరైతే ఓడిపోయారో, ఎవరైతే గెలిచారో, ఏ ఏ దేశాలైతే గెలిచాయో వాళ్ళందరి మీద డామినేట్ చేయడం, ఏ దేశాలైతే గెలవలేదో వాళ్ళందరూ కూడా గెలిచిన వారి చేత డామినేట్ చేయబడడం జరుగుతోంది. And 1950s, after what has happened, the richest countries are very powerful countries have started and a kind of a torturing with the lower developed countries, such as in the name of Cold War. అంటే 2 ప్రపంచ యుద్ధాలు కంటిన్యూగా చేసిన తర్వాత వాళ్ళకున్నటువంటి ఆస్తులు కావచ్చు, ఓపిక కావచ్చు, ఏదైనా అన్నీ కూడా ఖతమైపోయినాయి. ఓకే. కాబట్టి 1950లో ఏ దేశం కూడా ఒక దేశంతో యుద్ధం చేయడం గాని, లేకపోతే యుద్ధం చేయాలనే ఆలోచన కూడా తీసుకురాలేదు. ఎందుకంటే వాట్ ఎవర్ ద ప్రాపర్టీ దట్ దే హావ్ అండ్ దే హావ్ డ్రైడ్ అప్. ఓకే. దే డిడ్ంట్ హావ్ ఎనీథింగ్. ద థాట్ ప్రాసెస్ ఆఫ్ ద పీపుల్ ఆల్వేస్ దేర్ uttering the peace principle despiting to encouragement of a violence among the every country. సో గతంలో ఉన్నటువంటి ఏదైతే ఐడియాలజీ ఉందో వైలెన్స్ ఐడియాలజీ ప్రపంచం మొత్తానికి ఆగిపోయింది ఈ 2 ప్రపంచ యుద్ధాల తర్వాత. సో అండ్ ఇక్కడ ద ఐడియా ఆఫ్ ది సిస్టమ్ వాట్ ఇట్ హాస్ డన్ ఇస్ దట్ ఎగ్జాక్ట్‌లీ వేర్ యూ కెన్ ఇన్ దట్ టైమ్ జనరల్‌గా ఏం చేశారు కోల్డ్ వార్‌ని మొదలుపెట్టారు. కోల్డ్ వార్ అంటే ఇట్స్ నాట్ ఎ సంథింగ్ వార్, ఫిజికల్ వార్ వేర్ వన్ అండ్ ఈచ్ అదర్ ఎక్స్‌చేంజ్ ది వర్డ్స్. అంటే నేను కొడతానంటే నేను కూడా కొడతానన్నమాట. నేను డెవలప్ అవుతానంటే నేను కూడా డెవలప్ అవుతాను. నువ్వు చేయవు అంటే నేను కూడా చేయను. సో ఇట్స్ కైండ్ ఆఫ్ ఎక్స్‌చేంజింగ్ ఆఫ్ ది వర్డ్స్ బిట్వీన్ ద వన్ అనదర్ ఇన్ ఏ డిసోనెన్స్ వే అండ్ సచ్ యాస్ దిస్ సిస్టమ్ విచ్ హాస్ బీన్ ఎనేబుల్. అలాంటి సందర్భాల్లో కూడా ఇండియా అండ్ అప్పుడు యూఎస్ఏ అండ్ ఈజ్ ఇన్ ఎ కోల్డ్ వార్ విత్ రష్యన్ బేస్డ్ కంట్రీస్. అంటే యూఎస్ఎస్ఆర్‌లో ఉన్నటువంటి అన్ని సాటిలైట్ కంట్రీస్‌కి వ్యతిరేకంగా ఉన్నటువంటిదే యూఎస్ఏ. సో యూఎస్ఏకి వ్యతిరేకంగా ఎవరున్నారు? యూఎస్ఏకి సపోర్ట్ చేసినటువంటి కంట్రీస్ అన్నిటికి కూడా ఏ కంట్రీస్ వ్యతిరేకంగా ఉన్నాయి? యూఎస్ఎస్ఆర్‌కి సపోర్ట్‌లో ఉన్నాయి. యూఎస్ఎస్ఆర్ సపోర్ట్‌లో ఉన్నటువంటి కంట్రీస్ అన్నిటికి ఏ కంట్రీస్ వ్యతిరేకంగా ఉన్నాయి? యూఎస్ఏకి సపోర్ట్‌గా ఉన్నటువంటి కంట్రీస్. సో ఈ రెండిటి మధ్య జరుగుతున్నటువంటి ఏదైతే యుద్ధం ఉందో, అంతర్యుద్ధం ఉందో, ఇది కోల్డ్ వార్ ప్రచ్ఛన్న యుద్ధంగా పేరుగాంచిందన్నమాట. అంటే కేవలం మాట్లాడుతూ ఒకరినొకరు క్రిటిసైజ్ చేయడమే దీన్ని వర్డ్స్ ఐ మీన్ కోల్డ్ వార్ అనే పదంలోకి వచ్చిందన్నమాట. సో ఇలాంటి సందర్భాల్లో ఇండియాకి, యూఎస్ఏకి ఎలాంటి రిలేషన్‌షిప్ ఉండేదంటే యూ నో దట్ during the era of the Cold War, USA has decided to block communist expansions through the diplomacy and means. The pursuance of its policy, it has interfered in affairs of Vietnam, Middle East, and Germany and other countries. So at the time of NATO, CENTO సంబంధించినటువంటి వాటన్నిటిలో కూడా ఇండియాకి కావాల్సినటువంటి అసిస్టెన్స్ అన్ని కూడా యూఎస్ఏ ఇవ్వడం జరిగింది. అంటే యూఎస్ఏకి ఇండియా ఎంత మాత్రం సపోర్ట్ కాకపోయినప్పటికీ ఇండియాకి యూఎస్‌కి ఉన్నటువంటి ఏదైతే రిలేషన్స్ ఉన్నాయో that time both the countries are well versed with that in the 1950. Next one, attitude towards the People's Republic of China. So in terms of United India and as well as to that People's Republic of China in the 1950s, అంటే గతంలో చైనాకి తైవాన్‌కి మధ్యలో ఉన్నటువంటి డిస్టర్బెన్సెస్ ఏదైతే ఉన్నాయో వాటికి వ్యతిరేకంగా కూడా 2 దేశాలు కొంతవరకు హెల్ప్ చేయడం జరిగిందని చెప్పొచ్చు. So however, these 2 chapters will discuss tomorrow's class. I think you have joined a little late today. I have started in the right from beginning. You can also find the class in the YouTube, which is going on.
and you can see that in the sessions right from beginning which you have started. If you have any kind of a doubt regarding this lesson, determinants of foreign policy, you can ask me the questions so that I can go back and I can explain to you. Okay. I'll be here up to them in next 5 minutes up to you to take out your doubts, and then after I will stop. Huh? Yeah, yeah. India and China foreign policy I will explain, and everything I'll explain. Okay, tomorrow you can join in the early, in the exactly at 7 o'clock, so we can start the class. Okay. Till then, bye. Sure, sure. Definitely, I'll explain.